What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, former two-division world champion, former junior welterweight unified world champion, former WBC welterweight world champion, superstar boxer Danny Swift Garcia does a recent interview to do and promote a build-up for his highly anticipated December 5th showdown with undefeated unified WBC IBF welterweight world champion superstar boxer Errol Spence Jr. This set to take place in Dallas, Texas, December 5th at AT&T Stadium, Dallas Cowboys Arena. With that said, Danny Garcia did an interview. You're going to hear a lot of interviews and a lot of promotion from Danny Garcia and from Errol Spence both. With that said, yesterday, Danny Garcia did an interview in which he was asked a prediction, him and his father, trainer, and manager, Andrew Garcia, in which Andrew Garcia said, 7th round. We're gonna get Errol Spence Jr. up out of there in the 7th round. He said it's not personal, it's just business. This is what Andrew Garcia had to say. Usually, Andrew Garcia is a big talker. Danny Garcia doesn't say much, or co-signs what Andrew Garcia is saying. He just usually is pretty mellow. This time, Danny Garcia co-signed what Andrew Garcia says. He says that we are going for it in the 7th round. He said, that's my lucky number, lucky 7. So we're looking to get Errol Spence Jr. up out of there in the 7th round. That's our goal. He says, that's what's going to happen. We're going to knock out Errol Spence in the 7th round. Danny Garcia is never short on confidence. Danny Garcia has a great resume. Danny Garcia has a lot of power. He sits down on his punches. He can be flat-footed at times. He can be somewhat predictable at times because he's not the most athletic guy in the world. We know what he's coming in there to do. You know what you're going to get from Danny Garcia. He's going to be disciplined. He's going to make weight. He's going to sit down on his punches. He's going to be a counter puncher, and he has a lot of power. With that said, you pretty much know what you're getting. Errol Spence Jr., on the other hand, is versatile. But the big asterisk by Errol Spence Jr. currently right now is that prior to unifying his belts September 28th, defeating two-time welterweight world champion superstar boxer Showtime Shawn Porter September 28th, just 12 days later, October 10th, he suffered a horrific car accident in which you could see the video and the footage of this car accident, and you don't expect a man to walk away from that type of car accident. Nonetheless, Errol Spence Jr., he walked away from this car accident. And so most people feel like Errol Spence Jr. is not going to be the same guy. A lot of people, after seeing that video and hearing the news, they said Errol Spence, his boxing career is more than likely over. And if he do resume his career, he's not going to be the same guy. A lot of people feel like there's going to be a lot of lingering mental and physical injuries, right? Effects from that car accident. Errol Spence Jr. says it was a wake-up call. Errol Spence Jr. says he's identified and found his new love, or should I say, refound his love for the sport of boxing, as he's no longer celebrating. He's no longer taking the sport of boxing for granted, as he stated. He says that it was a struggle to make weight for the Mikey Garcia fight. It was a struggle to make weight for the Shawn Porter fight, simply because he just wasn't motivated in between fights as he should have been. He wasn't dedicated and disciplined, so he had to come down from 190 pounds, he says, to make 147. That's a whole lot of weight. That is 53 pounds that he had to lose. 43 pounds that he had to lose to get down to 147. That's a lot of weight to cut in a short period of time, because you have a window of two months normally, 3 months pushing it, okay? So that's a lot of weight to come down from. It takes a toll on your body, especially if you're out hanging out and partying. You're not sleeping like you should, you're not eating like you should, you're not resting like you should, and you're definitely not training like you should. So Errol Spence said that the car accident had the reverse effect on him. It woke him up. He says that, he's rededicated. He reacclimated himself to the sport of boxing. And he says that he's going to be even better than he was before the accident. We see guys like Vinny Pazienza, who was a world champion. He broke his neck in a car accident, and he came back and was better after that than he was after the car accident, after the incident, than he was prior to the incident. And that's what Errol Spence is aiming at. And Errol Spence didn't suffer near the same serious injuries. Well, they both suffered serious injuries, but it wasn't, he didn't break his neck, right? Errol Spence, he didn't even suffer any broken bones. He had to have some dental work, and obviously he had a lot of scarring on his face. With that said, Danny Garcia and Angel Garcia, they said they definitely looking to check his pulse as far as his chin goes, and see if he could take punches. The flip side of that is, even if he didn't have the car accident, they were going to check his chin and see if he could take their punches, because it's a fight, right? Let's just be honest here. Obviously, you're gonna check his chin because this is a fight. But normally, on normal circumstances, without the car accident, remove the car accident, Errol Spence is just a more versatile fighter. Errol Spence is the favorite in his fight, as he should be. Danny Garcia has 2 losses on his resume. He lost to former unified WBC, WBA, welterweight world champion, superstar boxer, in a unification bout, Keith one-time Thurman. Danny Garcia was the WBC belt holder. Keith Thurman was the WBA belt holder. And Keith Thurman won that fight. Then he fought for the vacant WBC title against Showtime Sean Porter, and Sean Porter won that fight. So he has 2 losses on his resume, but he has a deep resume, to say the least. And he definitely has a lot of power. Danny Garcia's biggest advantage and his biggest weapon in most of his fights is the fact that he has great timing. He sits down on his punches, and he's a counter puncher, essentially, with a lot of power in both hands. So it's not normal that you get a guy that has great timing and is a counter puncher and has an extreme power in both hands. And Danny Garcia's power comes from the fact that he's flat-footed, so he's sitting down on most of his punches, opposed to another fighter like, Keith Thurman or Manny Pacquiao or Terrence Crawford at times, or even Errol Spence. When they're utilizing the ring and using movement, you're not always sitting down on your punches, so you're not always going to get as much torque as you would if you just sit down on your punches and just throw them with your legs, and you're putting your legs and your hips into it, and you're throwing it with bad intentions. That's not always the case with guys like Keith Thurman, Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford, Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather, those guys that utilize the ring. Even Showtime Sean Porter, he uses a lot of movement. When you're using a lot of movement, like I state, you don't get as much torque on your punches because you're just not digging in and sitting down. Danny Garcia, his advantage is that he gets a lot of torque on his power because he's sitting down on his punches, but that's also a disadvantage because he's flat-footed, right? He can't, move. He's not moving as fast as his opponents, which allows his opponents to get in and get out, and he doesn't have the fastest hands in the world. So that allows his opponents to get in, dart in, and by the time he tries to counter them, they get out because they have quicker feet. Educated feet in the sport of boxing is everything. Quick feet in the sport of boxing is everything. And so he could get in and guys can get out. I like Keith Thurman in the first half, Sean Porter's style. That give him a lot of problems. Even Zab Judah in the second half of their fight, Zab Judah was getting in, getting out. Gave him a lot of problems. Now, his equalizer in this fight is the fact that Errol Spence is a southpaw. He has advantages, but Danny Garcia has advantages. His left hook is a big advantage, and your straight right hand is the kryptonite to a southpaw. But on the flip side of that, Errol Spence's straight left hand is a kryptonite to an orthodox fighter. And Errol Spence is quicker. Errol Spence is more versatile. He has quicker twitch fiber muscles, right? Which allows him to get on the inside. He's more rangy as well. And he's a better pure boxer. So he could get on the inside, he could land a punch to the body, a straight left, and he could get out before Danny Garcia is able to time him and counter him. But Danny Garcia has great timing, and this is a very dangerous fight for Errol Spence. He has to be on his P's and Q's, rounds 1 through 12, every second of every minute of every round, because any time, any point in time, Danny Garcia can land one of these hooks or a straight right hand and change the fight. And he's aiming to press the fight and get the knockout. You don't hear Danny Garcia often predict that he's going to get knockouts. You don't hear Danny Garcia giving you rounds. Danny Garcia understands, he identifies, and he highlights the fact that his opportunities at this level for a world title are slipping away. And this may be his last opportunity at welterweight. He's lost all his big fights at welterweight, the biggest fights at welterweight, Keith Thurman and Sean Porter. And Danny Garcia stated that he understands that he started slow. The first half of both of those fights, he lost the first 5 rounds of those fights. Arguably, 4 rounds to 1. Some people would say 5 rounds to 0, both of those fights. And he had to dig himself out of the hole, and he's not always first. He's not the aggressor. He's a counter puncher. So if you have to dig yourself out of the hole, you're counting on your opponent being active so you could counter their activity and have success. So if they're using a lot of movement, you find yourself chasing them, you open yourself up more if you're Danny Garcia, and you get hit a lot. Now, Danny Garcia does have a granite chin. He has a very sturdy chin, and he doesn't get hurt often. Now, he was buzzed against Zab Judah. He was buzzed against Lucas Matisse. He was buzzed against Keith Thurman. And, he was, I don't want to say buzzed by Lamont Peterson, but he was in a rough, rugged fight with Lamont Peterson. But he's never been down. He's never been wobbly. You never truly see him in compromised positions where you say, oh, look, Danny Garcia is on the verge of getting stopped. You don't see that. So he has a very, very granite chin. He sees a lot of punches coming. He's not the most elusive guy. He can be hit, and that's due to the fact that he's a counterpuncher, and he's not the most athletic, quick guy. He doesn't have quick twitch fiber muscles. So at times his hooks are very, very wide and looping, and you could get on the inside. The problem is he lets his hands go. So he'll throw one of those wide looping hooks, and you slip on the inside, he'll throw a right hook. If it's a left hook, he'll throw a right hook behind it. He puts his punches together very, very well. He's very, very accurate at times as well with his timing. But like I said, once he gets, I don't want to say desperate, but when he gets behind on the cards, he can open himself wide up, and you can have a lot of success. And that's what he don't want to be in. That's the position he don't want to find himself against Errol Spence, because Errol Spence is very, very technical in the ring. Errol Spence is very, very skillful and very, very disciplined in the ring. He stays behind his jab. He's very, very active. He's very, very accurate, and he has a beautiful body attack, which could prove to be a serious problem for Danny Garcia, or it could prove to be a serious problem for Errol Spence Jr. Because when you reach into the body, you open yourself up for counters. But this is going to be a great fight nonetheless. I'm favoring Errol Spence to win 8 rounds to 4, get an 8-round unanimous decision victory over Danny Garcia. But Danny Garcia is nothing to sneeze at. You cannot sleep on Danny Garcia. He's coming to fight. And I believe you're going to see Danny Garcia out of character, because Danny Garcia understands in this fight, he absolutely cannot start off slow. He cannot get behind on the scorecards. He cannot find himself in a hole and having to dig himself out. He's going to look to start fast, and Errol Spence has to be on his P's and Q's. Not to mention mentally, Errol Spence is going to be battling himself to see how he fares in his first true action. Now, he's been in sparring, obviously, but this is a true action without headgear, under the lights. There's going to be fans allowed in attendance. It's going to be a big stage, so he's going to he has a lot of questions he himself internally have to answer. So this is a very, very dangerous fight for Errol Spence, because Danny Garcia understands what he has to lose. He understands what's at stake. He understands where his shortcomings in his other 2 big fights, and he don't want to find himself 3 fights in the hole in all his big fights at welterweight. It's going to drop his stock drastically, and he don't want that. So let's see how this all plays out. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shouts out to the entire LDBC. Shouts out to New Media. Shouts out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.